Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Directions Mag Geospatial webinar, today sponsored by our friends at Geocortex. I'm Barbara Duke, Managing Editor here at Directions Mag, joined by our Assistant Webinar Producer, Lynette Qualia. We are excited to welcome back Patrick Fingler from Geocortex, and he has brought along a good friend, Chris Jacob, from the city of Waterloo. They have got some wonderful demos to show us how we can integrate data across our enterprise systems and get started. So welcome, gentlemen. Patrick, over to you.
Great. Yeah, thanks for the intro, Barbary. Yeah, hi, everyone. My name is Patrick Fingler, and like many of you, I too have a GIS background. So, I'm always keen to learn about new ways to enrich my GIS skills, and I've personally found that Directions Mag webinars are always a great way to learn about cutting-edge technology in the industry. So, over the last 5 years, I've had the opportunity to collaborate with a variety of organizations looking to extend their ArcGIS applications, and I'm personally really excited to be joined here today by Chris Jacob, who's the GIS manager from the city of Waterloo. Over the course of this webinar, we'll make sure to show several demonstrations that highlight how you can eliminate data silos by integrating your enterprise business systems with ArcGIS. So let's get started. Esri's ArcGIS ecosystem provides a wide array of maps, apps, tools to help you apply geographic decision-making to solve real-world problems. However, despite being told over and over again that the GIS is the system of record, most organizations typically have other enterprise software used to store additional authoritative information. For example, you might have some asset management or permitting systems that you use to manage work orders, inspections, permits such as Maximo, SAP, CityWorks, Novotics Elements XS, or Calterra, Amanda, the list goes on. Or perhaps you've implemented a document management system to make it easier to index and search for as-built drawings and related feature attachments using Laserfiche or OnBase. Most organizations also use a CRM in one form or another, such as Salesforce, and likely use other GIS-related products, such as Safe Software's FME. A lot of organizations use that, or other third-party imagery subscriptions, such as Nearmap or Pictometry or Cyclomedia. Again, I want to stress that this list of software products that you're seeing are just a few of the types of integrations that we've supported organizations with in the past here. But I'd like to encourage you to post any other systems that you might be using in the chat, and I can try and let you know if we've done any work with those in the past. But basically, if your enterprise software has an underlying backend database such as Oracle, SQL Server, PostgreSQL, or has a REST API, then we can likely integrate with it using Geocortex technology. So by extending your ArcGIS applications using Geocortex, we can support deeper integrations that ultimately improve your end user experiences so that they can continue to use the GIS as the system of record to get work done more efficiently, all while reducing the overall development effort involved. So what is Geocortex? Well, it's essentially a collection of configurable web and mobile GIS frameworks that are designed to allow you as a GIS analyst or a GIS developer to extend ArcGIS. And it's used around 1,500 organizations worldwide across different verticals, and is developed by Vertigis North America, whose headquarters are here in Victoria, Canada, which is where I'm currently presenting from today. Now, here at Vertigis, we're an Esri Platinum partner, one of just a few throughout the world. And we hold a number of Esri specialties as well, including the state and local government, ArcGIS Online, and Release Ready specialties. We're also an ArcGIS marketplace provider, which offers a great method for users to try out free trials of our software and access it and deploy it within your existing ArcGIS Online or ArcGIS Enterprise deployments. So one of the most common questions we hear is, where does Geocortex fit in relation to all of the other apps that come with Esri's ArcGIS? And there's a lot. Esri's continuing to add new apps every day, and typically we like to use this diagram to kind of explain where we fit. So over on the left, you have some of the out-of-the-box apps that, might come with ArcGIS, whether you're, configuring web maps or web scenes. If you're using those and you're able to accomplish your business process with those, then that's great. But sometimes users might want, more sophisticated functionality as their, resources and requirements evolve. So then they might move towards, using a configurable application like maybe Operations Dashboard or Web App Builder. And again, there's lots of tools available with Esri's ArcGIS, functionality. But again, we find organizations still, needing some more capabilities. And where we find there's typically a gap is when you kind of want to go from a configurable app to creating, a sophisticated solution, based on your unique business requirements. And this can often involve a lot of custom development to support, deeper integrations with some of these enterprise systems. And where we tend to come in is we come into this space and we reduce that amount of, reduce the amount of development effort involved by using kind of configurable frameworks, so allowing you to still build these kind of more sophisticated solutions that can integrate with different systems, but reducing the time. And all right, so now that we've talked about some of the types of systems that we've integrated with, I'd like to just spend a few minutes just discussing some of the different methods that are available for doing these integrations. So the first and simplest approach would be to use URL parameters. And these are typically, constructed as feature hyperlinks within a GIS application, and they're really great because they allow you to, click on a feature and then, launch an external application based on, passing some attribute information to it using, these replacement tokens. So in a moment here, Chris is going to be showing you how to do this using Maximo to, create work orders directly from your GIS. But I've just included a little sample here showing, how to do this using like a simple Google search. But essentially, yeah, this allows you to seamlessly connect your GIS to other enterprise systems. If you wanted to go like a step further, we offer a database linking, which allows you to relate non-spatial data living in your underlying databases to your spatial GIS assets. So as mentioned, lots of authoritative data lives outside of the GIS, and this offers a great approach to allow end users to still view detailed records about a GIS feature without having to hop to another third-party app or replicate your non-spatial data and publish that to your GIS. So leaving it, in its, in Oracle or SQL Server or PostgreSQL. And again, I think Chris is going to be showing an example of this in a moment here. The next approach, going beyond that would be to use Geocortex Workflow, which is a product that we offer, and I'll be, again, highlighting this in the demo portion of the webinar, but essentially it allows you to configure these interactive forms and widgets based on your unique business requirements using this kind of low-code, drag and drop, web-based interface, very similar to like Model Builder or FME. For example. And one of the benefits with using Geocortex Workflow is it has the ability to communicate with the REST API of different enterprise systems, so allowing you to build these kind of sophisticated widgets based on your unique requirements. Geocortex also has some capabilities that allow you to embed third-party apps or imagery directly within your GIS applications and kind of have bidirectional communication between the two. Several customers have embedded Geocortex apps, directly within their existing enterprise websites as well. I won't be focusing on this today, but it is another common integration we often see customers deploying in their GIS applications. And then lastly, if your requirements are really, really complex, then our software is also extensible using a nicely documented SDK. You can find more information on our developer center where you can build even deeper integrations and custom components using JavaScript and React. I won't be highlighting this today, but it's something to just be aware of if you have development staff. So now I'd like to introduce Chris Jacob from the City of Waterloo. He'll be highlighting how they've integrated IBM Maximo with their ArcGIS using Geocortex, and specifically, how they've deployed URL parameters to specify work order creation, as well as the database linking to make it easier to view historical Maximo records. So thanks for joining us today, Chris. I'll be passing it on to you.
Thanks, Patrick. I'm glad I was able to join you today.
Awesome.
Just as a tiny bit of an outline here, we're a fairly small municipality in southwestern Ontario, around 140,000 population, but we deliver all of the standard municipal services to our residents. So pretty typical for many attendees probably. So our integration between Geocortex and our Maximo implementation, it was done about 4 or 5 years ago, and it's served us quite well. It's met our operational needs that our field crews have had. They're using Maximo and Geocortex GIS out on iPads in the field. Because it was done, 5 years ago, it's not actually using the most recent technology. It's, shall we say, more established technology from Vertigis, but it's good, it works, and meets our operational needs, as I say. I like to describe it as what we do as a loosely coupled integration. And by loosely coupled, what I mean is it's not embedded within the apps. So the other applications, we don't have a map embedded, a Geocortex viewer embedded within Maximo. We don't have a Maximo window embedded within Geocortex. We provide the functions of each of those applications within the application. So they do what they're designed for. So if you're looking at spatial data or maps, or you want to view something in context and do some spatial queries, for that, we have our users use Geocortex viewer. If they're needing to deal with a work order, a service request in Maximo, deal with other integrations, other things that it does in terms of job scheduling and work management, all of that stuff is done in the Maximo interface. So each interface does what it's designed for. Our goal is to make data visible in each application and then provide useful links between them, just as Patrick was mentioning a few minutes ago. One feature of this that I do like is that it allows us upgrades on either side almost completely free of dependencies and extra requirements, as long as we keep our custom integration points functional. And now, when I say custom integration points, sounds very fancy. All I mean really is a bunch of database views and some URL links and URL parameters. And those are pretty easy to manage through versions and upgrades and keep consistent, keep them consistently working. Because it's largely configuration, it's not so much coding, it's fast, it's easy to do, and it works. So one more little piece of background here. Everything in my world of GIS anyway, starts with data. So back to that system of record that was mentioned earlier, all of our principal asset records for our most valuable assets are stored in GIS. And by assets, of course, I mean water mains, the whole water distribution network, really the storm drainage system, sanitary system, roads, and all the way over to other things like street trees and playgrounds, playground equipment. A slide in a playground is an asset equally as much as a water main. All of those assets stored with their birth certificate information, we call it, in GIS. All of those have a unique asset ID value assigned to them. It's unique across all of the asset classes. Maximo has a number of, in this case, PL SQL procedures. It ingests that asset data daily. It queries the data in GIS early every morning, gets new assets that have been added to the system, retires old ones that have been removed, and is then able to use those unique asset ID values in all of the service requests and work orders that are generated and managed in Maximo. To get data from the Maximo side into GIS, what we do is we've created some database views in the Maximo database, a view of all of the service requests and a view of all of the work orders, just including the basic, most relevant details for the people want to know. There's some ancillary views as well of notes and extra attachments if there's pictures to do with an asset and so on, but they aren't the principal views. Those are ancillary. So those views in the Maximo database we're able to make visible in the GIS database, and all of those Maximo work orders, for example, they all have a location ID, an address essentially, or an asset ID. sometimes both. What we're able to do with that is then create a spatial view using that asset ID or the location ID, the address, and we can go to spatial view and use those spatial views in ArcGIS server services and show them on a map in context. So that's how we get our data back and forth between the two systems. Now, it's about time I should get on here and show you something, isn't it? So Geocortex is, this is an example of an HTML5 viewer right here on the screen. This is how most city staff look at information in our GIS system. It's quick and easy, low barrier to entry for them. It's all good. We've got a couple of things. Here you can see some Maximo content. This is based on spatial views, as I said, and there's things like this particular grouping is associated with water services. So this is open water work orders and service requests that we have. For example, they're not drawing at the moment because we're zoomed out too far. There's also visible in this application, there's a lot of our infrastructure data for our core infrastructure. So all of that, I'll get into a couple more specific examples now. This is an example of, well, it's actually showing sanitary and water distribution and storm data right now. And we can see right here, there is a water work order going on. So if we have a look at that information here, you can see there's a work order. It's basically a catch basin repair. And if we need to, we can link directly to Maximo through this URL parameter right here. Through this URL right here, this link. I'll just point out very briefly the configuration of that, which is timed out. There we go. This is a simple matter of configuration. We can build that link inside this configuration panel here and pass that asset ID all over to Maximo. And that's quick and simple configuration. While I'm here, I will point out as well that we have links to other systems here, data links, which are basically database queries into 3 different systems here, the center one being Maximo. And that's very briefly said right there. If we look at some more information here, we can see a different view of this with all sorts of information about the Maximo work order, from that open water work order. And I need to just move this so I can get to the, there we go. Another quick example. This is another location in the city where we can see we have some open work orders. There's an open work order right here. This, again, is a catch basin repair. We can look at some more information here about the work order. We have a work order number and an ID, basic information. We know the status. This is a reasonably recent work order. We can tell when it has to be done by and who it's been assigned to. It's just basic information about the work order. Another example here, one way that people can create a work order in Maximo directly from an asset. This is a fire hydrant. We get the basic information about the fire hydrant shown here, and then we have 2 URL links that are provided. One is to create a service request in Maximo. One is to create a work order in Maximo. If I'm a manager or a crew chief and I wish to assign this work to someone, I can simply click on this Maximo work order link from the asset record, and it will take me in a new window to the Maximo login in my case. I'm not going to do that at the moment because it's a production system that we're showing, but it will take you straight into the work order creation screen in Maximo and pass that asset ID for this feature along. One last example here. This is our forestry editor. So staff at the city who work in the forestry area use this application in the field every day. And I've got a couple of things that I've coded here. Another example of a slightly different format relating to an asset. So the tree is right here. It's highlighted. There's a number of different things that they can do. These three all run workflows, as Patrick was mentioning earlier. This one, though, is essentially the same as that link we followed earlier, and it will create a service request within Maximo. Again, passing that ID over there. We can actually see that on this tree, there are already 2 Maximo work orders. So we can look at the work order details for one of these just by following this here, and as well as the basic tree information, we see some more of the details around that work order in Maximo. If we need to modify any of this work order information, here's a URL that we can just click on that. It will again open the Maximo screen, looking something like this, and whoever is actually doing the work can then go and update the status of the task and so on. There is a link here in a Maximo screen so that they can, this is an example right here, view address on map. That's what they would click on, the user in the field, if they needed to go back and look at that asset here in context with other trees around. So that's an example, a number of examples there of using simple data links and simple URL parameters where we build a URL and pass some useful information from one system to another. We don't just do this with Maximo, we do it with a number of other systems as well. But today we're concentrating on Maximo. So how's that, Patrick?
Yeah, that's fantastic, Chris. Yeah, thanks for giving us a demo. I always find it really fascinating to see how customers are leveraging Geocortex and ArcGIS to integrate with different systems in a you were saying in a production scenario, right? So thanks a ton for showing that that example. All right, so here we go. All right, so if you, again, Chris kind of showed how in their scenario you can click on a feature and then launch a URL, construct a URL parameter that would if you clicked on this, it would go into Maximo and allow them to fill in some additional information. Now I wanted to highlight, if you wanted to go even a step further than that, this is where we might use our workflow technology. So in this scenario, this is a development instance. We've configured a workflow that allows the user to click create work order or create service request, and it's going to actually query and send requests to Maximo's REST API, and it's going to pull in new information associated with that asset. So here we can see that it's actually creating a form where you can actually, without having to jump to Maximo, you don't have to leave your GIS application. You can simply, here we're actually filtering the list of work order types based on the asset we selected there. But this is, querying. This result is coming from Maximo's REST API. Here maybe we need to do a valve box repair. We can specify priority and say that need to repair valve box. And again, without leaving the GIS, if we click submit, this is going to actually create that work order within Maximo. I'll be showing the back end of Maximo in a moment here, but if I opened this work order will now be created, and the asset ID and information will be available in Maximo. Additionally, if you're, sometimes you're not creating a service request on an asset, but just generally. So here we could use this create service request or create work order option. And you'll see here, because this is now asking me to select a location on the map to specify my work order location. Let's say we're selecting, a location along this main. You'll see here, now we have the full list of options. Again, this is getting dynamically pulled from Maximo. So, in this scenario, maybe we want to report a leak or something like that. So again, I won't run through this whole process again, but we could again submit it, and then now we've got another work order created in Maximo. I wanted to highlight, so this functionality that you're seeing here is built using our Geocortex workflow product, so these forms and interfaces, and they also work within Web App Builder. So here I've got a Web App Builder application. This is using a different development interface for Maximo, but here we can see we're in Web App Builder, and I've created a workflow here, and you can see here if I go to the Network tab, it's again dynamically sending web requests to Maximo, and here you can see, I'm not going to dive into this too much, but we can see here there's a request going to Maximo, and it's supplying some parameters to populate these lists that we're seeing here. So we're issuing those web requests, and then we're retrieving these lists that are getting pulled from Maximo. So in this scenario, maybe we want to create adjust a valve or something like that on one of these water mains. So here I can select a location. We can specify the status. Again, this is being populated from Maximo, maybe waiting to be scheduled. You can say it's medium and need to adjust ball valve or something like that. Now here, when I click create work order, you'll see we again issue another web request to Maximo. And then we're also actually updating and creating an ArcGIS feature as well. So here you can see, status. These are using domains, so the status looks a little bit differently, but it's essentially saying it's been scheduled, the work order template's been assigned, and my comments and all that information got applied. And then I can actually open this work order directly within our development instance of Maximo. And let's log in there. And here you can see, now I'm in Maximo, and that information got dynamically passed. So I didn't tie it to an asset, so the asset information is not coming up. But here we can see my comments. Need to adjust ball valve got passed through. The status got assigned. The status date got assigned. Classification and description that I assigned got included, as well as my name and the report date. And I could, using Geocortex workflow, I could further manipulate that form to customize it. So maybe we need to estimate, the scheduling information. So provide our users with some date time pickers to allow them to identify the scheduled start and finish for that work order. Or maybe, populate some of the address information based on the location that I selected, or possibly giving them an option to upload an attachment so that that attachment automatically gets added to Maximo. So this is, again, going kind of a step further where you're allowing your end users to stay within the GIS application, but continue to pass and retrieve information from Maximo. And this is a very similar process for other asset management systems as well. So you might be asking now, like, how exactly do you do that? What's the configuration experience like for building this type of an integration? So first jump over to our Geocortex Apps kind of landing page here. So organizations that are using Geocortex can access our kind of web-based configurable designers by just navigating to apps.geocortex.com. We provide both SaaS designers, so you don't have to install anything. You can just click on Geocortex workflow and launch it. Or you can see here we've got a Geocortex community where you can download and host these web-based designers on your own on-premise infrastructure. If we go to Geocortex workflow here, you can see it's asking me to log in with ArcGIS Online or ArcGIS Enterprise. Again, we're very tightly integrated with the ArcGIS platform. I've already logged in here with my ArcGIS Online identity, and I've opened up the workflow that we just ran from Web App Builder. So here, if I zoom out, you can see it kind of, similarly resembles like Model Builder or FME, where it's kind of a drag and drop, flowchart based designer where you can kind of model your particular business process. And the idea behind workflow is our developers configure these different activities, some ranging from more programming logic, like doing for each statements and if, or for each loops and if statements, to more GIS operations like doing a buffer or getting your field workers location or running some geoprocessing tasks or querying layers. And essentially the idea is that you as a administrator creating this workflow just need to provide some inputs it'll, do all the processing and then give you an output, which you could then supply to another activity to, again, build your particular, custom activity based on your, unique requirements. Now, you'll see there's a large list of activities here, whether you need to do routing, feature editing, searching for assets, and so on. The list goes on. There's specific activities for Web App Builder or generating reports and PDFs. But central to this is our display form activity, which I've actually added here. So this is where users can actually build those, widgets or front-end interfaces where they can actually, add drop-down lists or file pickers if you need someone to upload a file, or a check group if you have an inspection and you need to say if it's toggled on or off or something like that. Again, there's a large library of form elements in here that you can add to your form, and you can add cascading logic and validation and so on to, again, create a very sophisticated solution for your end users. Now, these drop-down lists were being populated from Maximo. And you'll see here, if we scroll down, we've got actually a number of activities specific to Maximo, as well as other enterprise software vendors. So if we scroll down, we can see here we've got some activities for integrating with FME Server and running FME Server jobs, activities for integrating with Laserfiche and exporting Laserfiche documents, or just doing a Laserfiche search. And the idea is these have inputs, and then they'll run some process, send web requests to that REST API, so that you don't have to, spend a whole, tremendous amount of time doing and building a custom integration yourself. We've got activities for, integrating with CityWorks if you need to cancel work orders or close inspections. A lot of activities for CityWorks, as well as Element Success. But here we can see we've got some Maximo activities, which allow you to, update Maximo assets or retrieve Maximo assets and information, again, all using that kind of REST API. And if we look inside of here, we can see I've added, maybe I've lost them. There we go. We can see here we've got, I'm using this get Maximo resources, where really, again, it's a very simple configuration. You just choose the resource, whether it's a work order or feature that you want to connect to, and then you can create, a simple where clause, and it'll query Maximo and then pass you all of those results. So these activity packs, if you are a licensee for Geocortex Workflow, they're free to subscribe to. They're hosted on our GitHub. You don't have to be a developer. I know GitHub is a bit, scary and daunting, but if you just click on one of them, it'll just give you instructions. All you do is add an item to ArcGIS Online or ArcGIS Enterprise. There's some instructions, and then you'll get those activities inside of your Geocortex workflow implementation. And again, if you're not familiar with workflow, the idea is if you save this workflow, it's going to get stored back inside of your ArcGIS Online or ArcGIS Enterprise as an item, which you can share with other users. All right, so let's just quickly show some Laserfiche items, and then we'll break for questions. So here you can see this is another customer scenario where they've done something similar to what Chris at the City of Waterloo have done, where they've created some workflows that allow you to search for assets. So here they've got a little workflow where we can search for a plat by ID, and if we click find, it'll search for that particular location. And then here they've created those URL parameters as well. They've also created some embedding as well. So here we can see we've got some Google Street View integration that they've embedded in their application. But really what we're interested in here is this URL parameter that when we click on that, it's going to launch Laserfiche. And here we can see the associated as-built drawing, telling us that there's some brick walls and a brick patio nearby. So that's a very simple, easy to do integration that most organizations, if you've got a document management system, you should be able to implement using URL parameters. Again, if you want to go a step further, we have created those Laserfiche activity packs, which will allow you to visualize your documents in kind of like a nice document tree format. You can actually upload documents to Laserfiche from your GIS application. And I think I've got an example of this here, but I think our API just expired, so I'm not entirely too sure if this will work, but I've got some screenshots I can share as well. So yeah, I cannot collect Laserfiche token. So if we wanted to see, just a quick example of some of these in action, let me just jump back to my slides here. And here we can see this is the same application that I was showing. Here, again, using Geocortex, you can configure these nice URL parameters, but rather than having to jump, instantly to Laserfiche, you can click on, show me all the related Laserfiche documents for this asset, and it'll present you with this kind of nice tree view-like diagram. Now, this is a development app, but here you can see, some of your documents might have different categories, and then clicking on one of these documents will then kind of take you to that Laserfiche asset. So it's just, again, a little bit of a nicer experience so that they're not having to, leverage some of the Laserfiche tools. They can continue to kind of be using your GIS. And similarly, they might want to upload documents on an asset directly within their GIS. So here we've selected an asset. We've got a little option to add a file. They could select a file of interest, and then when they click submit, that will get submitted to Laserfiche while staying within their GIS. So now we've done these activity packs for Maximo, Laserfiche, FME, and the list goes on. So definitely let us know some of the other types of integrations that you might be wanting to accomplish. So again, in summary, integrating with your ArcGIS with Laserfiche allows you to associate docs with your GIS assets, search for docs using a mapped interface. This really allows you to simplify your user's experience because they're not having to use other third-party applications as much. And then this ultimately means you have less user training required so that they can just continue to use, one application, use that as the kind of the system of record, and then it's still populating and retrieving assets from another environment. And it's a very similar approach to the Maximo integration that I was highlighting, as well as what Chris highlighted as well. So being able to integrate your ArcGIS with Maximo allows you to simplify your work order creation, manage your assets using a map, really reduce your duplicate data entry, and ultimately, again, it's all about improving your end user experiences. So with that, I think we're gonna jump into our last poll here, and then we'll wrap things up for questions.
So I know that the team over at Geocortex is interested in getting you the right information. So if you would like to learn more about one of these particular areas, be sure and select all of those that are of interest. So while we'll give folks a moment to click some choices there, Patrick, and looks like we've got a lot of folks interested in enterprise. No big surprise. All right. Very good. We'll give you another couple of seconds, and be sure and type in those questions, folks. We've got several, and we're going to squeeze in as many as we can here in the last few minutes that we have. But go ahead and type those in because the team will follow up with you directly. All right. So let's hide away the poll, and I think maybe you've got a resource there for us to chase.
Exactly, yeah. So just if you're wanting to learn a little bit more about Geocortex or access some of the technology, you can find us on the ArcGIS Marketplace. You can access the widgets for your ArcGIS Online or ArcGIS Enterprise versions of Web App Builder. We also have documentation online, a doc center that you can navigate to as well. We've got a YouTube channel where you can watch, short little videos to learn about how to, build workflows and connect to different enterprise systems. And we've also got training available and, a developer center if you do want to, dive into some of those SDKs if you are a developer. And then also, I'm sure a lot of customers and folks are interested in those workflow activity packs. So you can find those on GitHub, and I'm sure this list is going to continue to grow in the future. And then again, we always have professional services. So if you do need any support implementing these deeper integrations, we're happy to help. So with that, let's dive into questions. And if you're wanting to get started, just navigate to apps.geocortex.com, and we've got free trials available. So let's maybe I'll pop open the chat window, or if Barbary, if there's any.
So let's start with, do you integrate with Tableau?
Yeah, so we have implemented integrations for Tableau. I think most of the integrations that I've seen have been kind of those like URL parameter type approaches, but again, you know, if it's got a REST API, which I imagine Tableau does, it's a visualization tool, there's different ways we could integrate it with it, potentially even by embedding some of those charts and so on inside of a Geocortex viewer. But yeah, we definitely have done integrations with Tableau.
All right. And then the next one is, this is sort of a scenario for you to imagine. Can Geocortex link together multiple third-party apps? And they've given us a scenario. System A generates the data, it flows to the GIS, and then it triggers something in yet a third system.
Yeah, so it sounds like, potentially using like webhooks or, different like scripts that can run on, servers and so on. So yeah, the answer is yes, we've done, all of the above types of integrations. So you could, whether you're using, webhooks to, connect a workflow to a webhook, or, pass content from one system to another. Yeah, definitely possible. And again, I'll kind of go back and just say that if you've got a REST API or an underlying database, then we've got pretty easy tools that allow you to connect to those systems.
All right.
But I can follow up with you after the webinar, and we can specifically take that offline and dive into it a little bit deeper for sure.
Perfect. So I've got a list over there for you.
Mm-hmm.
We've got several. If you want to,
sure. Yeah.
I don't know if you want to tackle several.
Yeah.
There's a list, right, of people have been diligent to send us. What about this one and that one and this one? And
totally.
so maybe tackle a few of those.
Yeah. So does the FME integration require work on the FME side, or can we make calls and request the FME data from workflow? So yeah, there's not no work necessary on the FME side, as long as I'll just mention this is for FME server. So as long as you have an FME server service and you've created a workspace, I think, for FME server, then we can connect to it. So you can have the workflows provide the front end interface. You can call that FME server process. It does all the converting and data extraction, and then you can present that information back to Geocortex, whether you need to like download a data set in a different format or something like that. So not a lot of work there on the FME side. Has Geocortex been used to support an online permitting application? Yeah, definitely. We've got lots of, I think, even public customer examples for managing permits and integrating with, for example, like Calterra, Amanda, and other permitting systems is very common. We see that a lot with our kind of local and state governments as well. How would you work with integrating numerous business line DBs, bespoke databases that already feed custom applications? So there's a couple of ways to do that. One would be kind of the data linking approach. So if it's, we can connect to it from a ODBC provider or SQL Server or Oracle, PostgreSQL, we could, you can keep that data where it is, and as long as there's kind of like a primary key for your GIS asset and that non-spatial database, then we can easily link to that. So you can click on an asset and retrieve information on those other databases. And then another one would be just through workflow. We've got activities, I didn't really show them, but for issuing queries as well to those databases. When do you hope to have workflow reporting working in Experience Builder? That's a great question. So yeah, the tool I showed, Workflow, I didn't really show reporting, but it's another product we offer. I showed that working in Web App Builder. We're anticipating those products to be available in Experience Builder, I think, near the end of this year. So yeah, definitely look forward to using those in Experience Builder. Can we discuss scheduling an online permit demo? Yeah, definitely. We're happy to follow up with you, and we can schedule a demo to show you some of the permitting integrations that we've done.
So we're actually we're out of time, but
Yeah.
maybe one last question for you. I see one here about a relational data that's connected to a geodatabase. Can Geocortex display this data and or write changes to the relational database? How would that be configured using your software?
Yeah, so that's really simple. So if you've just added that relational data to, a web map, then we've got, our applications can consume that web map, whether you're using web app builder or a Geocortex viewer like Chris. Yeah, we can, allow you to easily view those records out of the box, and then also edit those records if they're editable out of the box. But as always, you could use a workflow to create a more kind of customized editing experience. But most of that, content should just be available through simple configuration.
Excellent. Well, Patrick, thank you so much. Maybe click back one slide there and let's remind folks of that address, apps.geocortex.com, to get you started. And remind everybody to keep an eye on their inbox. We will be in touch with a link to the recording so you can have a look at that again, as well as your attendance certificate. Thank you again to Patrick and Chris for sharing their expertise, as well as the fine support in the background from Shane, Brock, and Emily. We hope that you will stop by and see more geospatial webinars. As a matter of fact, I happen to know that there are some other Geocortex webinars that that they could catch up on, talking about some of these other things that you mentioned today. So thanks everybody for being here. We hope that you'll tell a friend about Geocortex and Directions Magazine. Have a great afternoon.